The final pair in this first round of Pro Stock is Kerry Vizic, our only lady competitor in Pro Stock, and Len Paget. Len is the third member of the trio that can win the championship. He's also our Euro Series champion for 1991, so he's had a successful year. Lenny's also responsible for quite a lot of the mechanical work that goes on Kerry Vizic's bike. So, once again, mates racing on the track. Despite Len winning this race, Kerry goes on to run her personal best of 8.37, which is very respectable. This result gives Kerry 4th place in the ACU Championship and number 4 as her number for next year. We now move into the semi-finals, and here we have the Viking Tyre Suzuki of Wayne Saunders. Star Racing motor, Cosman chassis, real state-of-the-art stuff, and on 7.9 second pace at the moment. This is Graham Dance with his 1325cc Charlie Fry Motors Suzuki. Graham too is on personal best pace, having just run 8.4 to move into the semi-finals. His only chance really is to get a hole shot and hopefully force Wayne to do something silly. And that's what he does. But Wayne makes no mistake and powers past once again at 7.9 seconds at over 170 miles an hour and moves into the final. The second semi-final's a real needle match. This is Paul Willis and he's racing Len Paget. And the outcome of the championship is almost dependent on this race. Now that Cole Rule has been eliminated, it's down to these two as to who takes first and second place. Paul running a 1325 Orient Express Suzuki, Len Paget with a very much home-tuned but quite a lot of parts from Star Racing inside his particular machine. Both of these guys have run in the 7.9 second bracket, although not at this meeting. And Len Paget gets the whole shot, and there's nothing that Paul Willis can do about it. Lenny's made it through to the final. Here in the final, he's facing up against Wayne Saunders. If he can beat Wayne, he takes the ACU Championship and becomes our national champion. Wayne can still affect the outcome of the championship, although he can't win it himself. If Wayne takes the win, then Paul Willis takes the championship. Wayne has also moved into the right-hand lane. Unfamiliar territory for him, but favouring the track conditions there, following an oil down in the left-hand lane, which we saw earlier. And there's a problem there for Lenny. As you can see, his wheelie bars have broken on the practice launch, and so that's the end of Lenny's race day, and unfortunately the end of his championship bid. The championship now goes to Paul Willis, and Wayne Saunders solos through for the final of the ACU Championship. He didn't back off the pace though, running 7.87 seconds at 175 miles an hour to establish new ET and terminal speed championship records. Now we move into Top Fuel, and here we see the gladiators getting ready to go out and fight. That's Steve Woollett, and that's Chris Hampson just warming up the JCB funny bike. In the background you can see Roger Forsyth putting his helmet on, and this is Phil Brackvogel. Those pensive moments just before you get on the bike. Last minute adjustments to tyre pressure, and here we are out on the track. That's Roger Forsyth, and this is Phil Brackvogel. The long push back after the burnout. 1408cc of Puma Kawasaki, and in the case of Roger Forsyth's bike, 1300cc of Puma Yamaha. Both bikes have Sprintex superchargers, both bikes have Hillborn fuel injection systems, and both bikes are running large percentages of nitromethane. Roger has run a 720, Phil Brackvogel a 681. The white line and segment on Roger Forsyth's bike are there to show up tyre deformation and wheel spin, when the run is checked on video afterwards. But it's Phil Bractvogel that takes the narrow win and goes through into the final. The second semi-final pits the funny bike of Chris Hampson against the fuel bike of Steve Woolett. And here we see Steve Woolett making his way out to the line, through the water and into the rolling burnout. Chris Hampson does a static burnout and rolls out of the water. And both bikes get ready to start. The long push back from the crew. Back in that tyre mark that he's laid there to get the maximum traction. Then forward into the staging beams. You'll see Steve just make a final adjustment to the fuel system before he runs, waiting to see that Chris Hampson is ready, adjust the fuel system, into stage, and then away for another 7-second blast up the quarter mile. But problems for Steve, he actually breaks the rear hub on this run. And Chris Hampson powers through into the final. So there we have the Bractvogel brothers quarter scorcher. They've had a fairly desperate time this year, having lost their combination. That 6-second reliability they found during last season has deserted them, as they've changed the engine and chassis components. It's also meant that they've lost their ACU championship, something that Phil Bractvogel has held for the past 3 years. In the final they're racing Chris Hampson with the JCB funny bike, someone who's really found reliability and low 7-second pace. Doesn't quite have the performance of the fuel bikes, but it's the consistency that worries them. He seems to be able to run 720s wherever he goes, and the fuel bikes can't guarantee to run 6s all the time. He also has lightning fast reactions on the start line, and that's another worry for a fuel bike rider. So brother Frank lines Phil up on the start line, final adjustments to the motor, now it's just down to the racers. No psychology here, both riders want to get this over with, and into stage. But Phil Bractvogel leaves early and pulls a red light, handing the win to Chris Hampson. That win moves Chris Hampson into second place in the championship, and Steve Woolett is the 1991 ACU Top Fuel champion. So there we have it, another successful finals meeting, and a race meeting where the standards of performance and racing were the highest ever. Our thanks go to our crew of marshals, to the sponsors, and of course to the spectators for their continued support. One racer who didn't race at the finals was Brian Johnson, and we see him here on his Puma Yamaha Top Fuel bike. He'd been at Avon Park the weekend before, and he set a new world record for Top Fuel bikes of 6.61 seconds. Technical problems prevented him from coming to the finals. Here we watch him going through his pre-run burnout, prior to the run, which was the run after the world record setting. As you can see, all the problems inherent in running a fuel bike are shown in this run, as Brian gets out of shape and actually clips the 8th mile lights on his way through and does not back up the run on that particular run. Regulations state that he must back up his record pass within 1% at the same event. This is the run on which Brian actually backs up the record. It's the following day, and it's the first round of competition, and he's running against Roger Forsyth. Once again he goes through his burnout ritual, gets the tyre hot and sticky. Then the crew push him back before he makes his way up to the start line. On this particular run, Brian runs 6.64 seconds, close enough to give him the world speed record for Top Fuel motorcycle. You'll see he achieves it smoking the tyre as well, just shows how much potential there is. Later in the day, in the final, Brian runs 6:67. All these runs with terminal speed well over 200 miles an hour, the fastest being 215. But Brian has a bit of an unusual problem here. Once again the crew push him back and he gets ready to make his quarter-mile run. Can you imagine what it must feel like to go from 0 to 215 miles an hour in 6.5 seconds? There are very few people in the world know that feeling. But as I was saying, Brian has a problem. Just watch what happens as he goes through the finish line. And we then talk to Brian at the finals.
Basically, on the final run that I made, my helmet actually flew off at 208 miles an hour, which was quite an experience.
What about the rider in the other way?
He luckily wasn't hit by the helmet. It did bounce by him, but luckily it didn't touch him.
What actually happened? Why did it go off?
Well, the only thing we can think of is that it was just brain fade on my part. I put the loop of material through the top part of the buckle, didn't put it through the bottom and just put it on the Velcro, and the Velcro can't hold that kind of speed. I think it's possible to get into the 220s. How you go much faster than that, I wouldn't know, but 220s I think are certainly attainable. I'm not running today because at that particular meeting we tried some different big end bearings in the bike, which did in fact fail, and the good quality ones that we needed didn't arrive until very late on Friday night, and there was just no time to put the bike together.
We asked Brian to take us through a run on the Imperial Wizard.
Well, before we even go to the line, we pre-warm the bike to make sure that everything is in order with just methanol. The extra little bit of heat in the motor helps it to burn the nitro, because nitro doesn't really want to burn. It's a very bad fuel. I pull around the water, back into the water. From the water, I will sit stationary while my crew goes forward, ready to come to me after the burnout. I'll give it about a third throttle in the burnout, never full throttle because that'll break it. And I go about 25 yards or so with that kind of power on, and then shut it off and come to a safe stop. From there I get pushed back, probably 2 bike lengths behind the actual start line. I'll line myself up as I want to be on the start line, pull into stage, and when the green line comes on, I'm gone. You have to use your body weight. The only thing that I can see that is anything like it is riding a sidecar outfit. You leave the bike where it is and move your body weight in the direction that you want it to go. That way it stays upright, which is very important with the width of tyre we use, because if you lean it, the tyre impact becomes very narrow, and you don't want that with that kind of horsepower.